In the streets of ancient Athens in the year 399 BCE, the city, once the beacon of democracy and intellect, now stands divided and weary after years of war. In a small, crowded courtroom, a man with a broad forehead and messy hair stands before his judges. This is Socrates, the gadfly of Athens, who has stirred the city's conscience with his relentless questions. As he defends himself against charges of corrupting the youth and impiety, he delivers words. An unexamined life is not worth living. This simple statement is more than a defense. It's a call to arms for every thinking person. It's a challenge to look within, question the norms, and seek truth no matter the cost. Socrates' life and death inspire generations, but his story is just the beginning of a journey that changed the course of human thought forever. Socrates, along with his student Plato and Plato's student Aristotle, formed a trio that forever altered how humanity perceives itself, its purpose, and its universe. They didn't just teach us how to think, they showed us how to live, and perhaps more importantly, how to die with integrity and courage. Before Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, the ancient Greeks sought answers in the realm of Mythos, a world shaped by gods and goddesses, divine whims, and mystical tales. Thunderstorms were Zeus's wrath, the changing seasons Demeter's sorrow. These stories provided comfort and meaning, but offered little room for questioning or critical thought. Then came the philosophers, a rare breed of thinkers who dared to ask, what if the universe was not governed by gods? Could reason, not faith, unlock the mysteries of existence? This marked the transition from mythological explanations to rational thought. The Pre-Socratics, pioneers like Thales and Heraclitus, laid the foundation by speculating on natural causes and universal truths. But it was the Gang of Three who truly turned the tide, shaping a worldview rooted in reason, inquiry, and logic. Their ideas weren't just philosophical, they were revolutionary. They shifted humanity's gaze from the heavens to the human mind, urging us to trust our ability to think, question, and understand. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle are often called the architects of Western thought, and for good reason. Their ideas form the bedrock of everything from science to ethics, politics to psychology. Socrates taught us to question everything, to live authentically, and to prioritize virtue over material gain. Plato envisioned a world where justice, truth, and the good could transcend human flaws. His allegory of the cave is a timeless metaphor for enlightenment. Aristotle built upon their ideas, grounding philosophy in observation and logic. He became the father of disciplines like biology, political science, and literary theory. Their teachings remind us that happiness isn't found in wealth or power, but in virtue, community, and the pursuit of knowledge. For those grappling with mental health, their philosophies offer solace. Socrates' stoicism in the face of death inspires resilience. Plato's notion of the soul's harmony encourages balance. Aristotle's emphasis on habits and virtues provides a roadmap for well-being. Their story isn't just about philosophy, it's about what it means to be human. We'll uncover not only the origins of Western thought, but also the timeless wisdom they offer for living a life of purpose, courage, and joy. Before Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle transformed philosophy into a disciplined pursuit of wisdom, ancient Greece was a land of gods and myths. These myths were more than stories. They were a framework that explained everything. Why did the sun rise? Helios carried it across the sky. Why did storms rage? Zeus was angry. For centuries, these mythological tales provided comfort and certainty. but they also discouraged questions. After all, why question the will of the gods? Yet, in the 6th century BCE, a group of thinkers emerged who dared to look beyond the myths. They sought rational explanations for the world around them. This marked the dawn of Logos, the use of reason and logic to understand the universe, setting the stage for the philosophical revolution led by Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Ancient Greece was a fragmented collection of city-states, each with its own customs, dialects, and gods. Life was hard. Most people farmed or fished, relying on the whims of nature. Religion was central to their existence, providing answers to life's mysteries through mythos. For example, earthquakes were the work of Poseidon, and illness was a punishment from the gods. These explanations were deeply satisfying because they gave meaning to suffering. However, as trade expanded and cultures intermingled, new questions arose. Could there be universal principles governing nature? Was there a single substance or force that underpinned everything? These early inquiries marked a seismic shift from accepting myths to questioning them, a transition from mythos to logos. This movement began with the Pre-Socratic philosophers, so called because they preceded Socrates. They were the first to suggest that natural phenomena could be explained by reason rather than divine intervention. The journey into rational thought began in Miletus, a city in modern-day Turkey. The philosophers of Miletus, Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes, are often credited with laying the foundation for scientific thinking. Thales was the first to propose that the world wasn't shaped by gods, but by natural substances. He believed that water was the fundamental substance from which everything arose. Why water? Thales observed that water was essential for life, could exist in solid, liquid and vapor forms, and was ubiquitous in nature. His ideas may seem simplistic today, but they represented a groundbreaking shift, an attempt to explain the universe without invoking mythology. Anaximander, a student of Thales, disagreed with his teacher. He proposed that the universe's source wasn't water but something more abstract, the apeiron, or the boundless. The apeiron was infinite, eternal, and the source of all things. Anaximander also speculated about the origins of life, suggesting that humans evolved from simpler forms, a startling precursor to evolutionary thought. Anaximenes, another Milesian philosopher, simplified the idea further. He proposed that air was the fundamental substance. By condensing or rarefying, air transformed into other materials: fire, water, earth, and everything else. Anaximenes introduced the idea of processes transforming matter, paving the way for future scientific inquiry. As philosophical inquiry deepened, thinkers began exploring more abstract and complex ideas. Pythagoras is best remembered for his mathematical insights, but his philosophy extended far beyond geometry. He believed that numbers were the essence of the cosmos. Harmony, he argued, wasn't just musical but universal, a principle that governed everything from the movement of stars to the structure of the human soul. His ideas about harmony influenced not only science, but also ethics and aesthetics. Xenophanes dared to challenge the anthropomorphic portrayal of gods in Greek mythology. He pointed out the absurdity of gods resembling humans, arguing instead for a single, all-encompassing divine principle. His skepticism laid the groundwork for critical thinking in religion and philosophy. Heraclitus famously declared, "You cannot step into the same river twice." For Heraclitus, change was the fundamental nature of reality. Everything is in constant motion, he argued, governed by a unifying principle he called the Logos. His work emphasized the dynamic and interconnected nature of existence. Parmenides directly contradicted Heraclitus. He argued that being was the only true reality and that change was an illusion. For Parmenides, what is cannot become what is not. His ideas forced later philosophers to grapple with the nature of existence and perception. In the later stages of pre-Socratic thought, philosophers began to synthesize earlier ideas. Empedocles combined the insights of his predecessors by proposing that all matter was composed of 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. These elements were driven by 2 opposing forces: love, which united them, and strife, which separated them. His work influenced both philosophy and early science. Anaxagoras introduced the concept of nous, or mind, as the organizing principle of the cosmos. He believed that nous initiated motion and gave order to the chaotic universe. This idea anticipated later philosophical debates about intelligence and purpose. Democritus proposed that all matter was composed of tiny, indivisible particles called atoms. His atomic theory, though rudimentary, was a bold attempt to explain the physical world scientifically. While the pre-Socratics sought universal truths, the Sophists focused on the art of persuasion and practical wisdom. Protagoras famously declared, "Man is the measure of all things." He believed that truth was subjective and varied between individuals. This relativism challenged the notion of objective morality. Gorgias argued that nothing truly exists, and if it does, it cannot be known or communicated. Despite this extreme skepticism, he excelled in rhetoric, teaching how to sway audiences with words. Prodicus emphasized the importance of precise language and ethics, while Hippias advocated for universal education. Together, they enriched the intellectual landscape of Greece by blending practical and philosophical ideas. Socrates stands as a towering figure in philosophy, a man whose ideas transformed the way we think about virtue, knowledge, and the human soul. Yet, he left behind no writings. Everything we know comes from others who loved, hated, or ridiculed him. Athens, in its golden age, a city bursting with energy and creativity. It was the birthplace of democracy, where citizens gathered to debate laws and shape their government. Philosophers like Pythagoras and sophists roamed the streets, sharing radical ideas. The city's architecture reflected its ambition. The Parthenon, a marvel of precision and beauty, stood as a testament to human ingenuity. Theatre flourished, with playwrights like Sophocles and Euripides bringing the gods and heroes of mythology to life on stage. This intellectual and cultural flourishing created fertile ground for a thinker like Socrates, whose questions would challenge the very foundations of Athenian thought. But Athens' glory was fleeting. The Peloponnesian War pitted Athens against its rival, Sparta. Years of bloodshed drained the city's resources and morale. Famine, plague, and internal strife eroded the democratic ideals Athens once championed. By the time the war ended, Athens was a shadow of its former self, a city battered, bitter, and searching for meaning. Socrates emerged in this atmosphere of decline, asking questions no one dared to confront. What is justice? What is virtue? How should we live? Socrates was born in Athens around 470 BCE to a humble family. He likely inherited his father's trade and worked as a sculptor in his youth. But something about Socrates set him apart. He had a sharp mind and an insatiable curiosity that led him away from carving stone to carving out truth. Socrates became famous for his unique way of questioning, what we now call the Socratic method. He believed that asking the right questions could uncover universal truths. Here's how it worked. He'd pose a simple, seemingly obvious question, like, what is courage? He'd challenge every answer, revealing contradictions and forcing his audience to refine their thinking. By the end, they often realized they knew far less than they thought, a humbling but enlightening experience. For Socrates, wisdom began with admitting one's ignorance. Socrates' philosophy wasn't about abstract ideas. It was about how to live a good life. He believed that knowledge and virtue were inseparable. To be good, one had to understand what goodness truly was. His famous motto, "Know thyself," wasn't just advice. It was a command to examine one's soul and align one's actions with truth and justice. One pivotal moment shaped Socrates' mission. The oracle at Delphi, when asked if anyone was wiser than Socrates, replied, "No one." At first, Socrates was puzzled. How could he be the wisest when he knew so little? Then he realized his wisdom lay in this very admission. He knew that he didn't know. This humility drove him to question others, hoping to uncover true wisdom. Socrates wasn't just a philosopher. He was also a soldier. Socrates married Xanthippe, who was known for her sharp tongue. Many stories portray their relationship as tumultuous, with Xanthippe frustrated by Socrates' lack of interest in material wealth. Yet their marriage was likely one of mutual respect, even if their personalities clashed. Socrates had profound views on love, which deeply influenced Plato's dialogue. He saw love not just as a physical or emotional connection, but as a path to truth and beauty. For Socrates, true love inspired the soul to seek higher ideals, transcending mere desire to reach the divine. In 399 BCE, Socrates was charged with corrupting the youth and impiety, which means disrespecting the gods. At his trial, he refused to beg for mercy, choosing instead to defend his life's mission. He argued that he was a gift to Athens, a gadfly that kept the city awake and questioning. Yet the jury found him guilty. Sentenced to death by hemlock poisoning, Socrates faced his fate with remarkable calm. In his final moments, he continued to teach, comforting his friends and discussing the nature of the soul. For Socrates, death was not an end but a transition, a chance to explore the unknown. He accepted his sentence not as a punishment, but as the ultimate act of integrity. His life and death became a testament to the power of truth and the courage to stand by one's convictions. Socrates taught us that philosophy isn't just about lofty ideas, it's about how we live. In the words of his student, Plato, Socrates is the wisest, justest, and best of all men. Plato is a name that resonates across centuries as one of history's most influential thinkers. He wasn't just a philosopher, he was a storyteller, a visionary, and a builder of intellectual frameworks that still shape how we think about justice, love, knowledge, and the soul. Plato's journey is intertwined with his mentor Socrates and his student Aristotle, forming a golden chain of wisdom that spans generations. Plato was born around 428 BCE in Athens, a city still reeling from the Peloponnesian War. He came from an aristocratic family with uncles and cousins involved in politics. From an early age, Plato was exposed to the complexities of governance and society, but he quickly realized that he sought something deeper than political power, wisdom. When Plato met Socrates, his life changed forever. Socrates' relentless questioning and unwavering commitment to truth captivated him. Plato became one of Socrates' most devoted followers, absorbing his teachings and witnessing his trial and execution. The death of Socrates profoundly affected Plato, driving him to ensure that his teacher's ideas would never be forgotten. After Socrates' death, Plato left Athens, traveling to places like Egypt and southern Italy. In Egypt, he encountered advanced mathematics and astronomy, while in Italy he was influenced by Pythagorean ideas of harmony and numbers. These experiences broadened his perspective, blending Greek philosophy with insights from other cultures. Returning to Athens, Plato founded the Academy around 387 BCE, the first formal institution of higher learning in the Western world. The Academy wasn't just a school, it was a place where students could explore the mysteries of existence, debate ethics and politics, and study the cosmos. Plato's Academy laid the groundwork for modern universities, emphasizing the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. In Plato explores one of philosophy's oldest questions: can virtue be taught, or is it innate? The dialogue begins with Socrates and Meno discussing whether virtue is a skill, a gift from the gods, or something we can learn. Plato introduces the theory of recollection, a cornerstone of his philosophy. He suggests that the soul is immortal and has knowledge from past lives. Learning, therefore, isn't acquiring new information, but remembering what the soul already knows. In a powerful demonstration, Socrates guides a slave boy to solve a geometry problem, proving that knowledge lies dormant within us, waiting to be awakened. In Plato presents a poignant account of Socrates' final hours, weaving together profound philosophical insights and emotional depth. The dialogue revolves around Socrates' belief in the immortality of the soul. Socrates argues that the soul transcends physical death, entering a realm of eternal truths. He uses several arguments, such as the theory of opposites, life and death are part of a cycle, and the argument from recollection, which states that our ability to recognize eternal truths implies an immortal soul. The dialogue is both a farewell to Socrates and a meditation on life, death, and the pursuit of truth. It invites us to face mortality with courage and grace, just as Socrates did. In Plato explores the nature of love, which he describes as a form of divine madness. To Plato, love is more than desire. It is a force that inspires the soul to ascend toward truth and beauty. Plato uses the metaphor of a charioteer guiding two horses to explain the human soul. The charioteer represents reason. One horse is noble and represents spirit. The other horse is unruly and represents desire. The charioteer's task is to balance these forces, steering the soul toward enlightenment. Love, Plato argues, is the driving force that helps the soul rise above base desires to connect with higher ideals. Is Plato's masterpiece, a dialogue that grapples with the question, what is justice? Plato imagines an ideal society where justice prevails, ruled by philosopher kings who possess both wisdom and virtue. One of the most famous sections of is the allegory of the cave. Plato describes prisoners chained in a cave, watching shadows on a wall. These shadows are their reality, but they are mere illusions. When one prisoner escapes and sees the sunlight, he understands the true nature of reality. The cave symbolizes ignorance, while the sunlight represents truth and enlightenment. Plato urges us to break free from the shadows of our assumptions and seek higher understanding. Plato argues that only philosophers who understand the forms, eternal unchanging truths, are fit to rule. His vision of an ideal state reflects his belief that wisdom, not wealth or power, should govern society. Plato turns to the nature of knowledge. Socrates and his interlocutors wrestle with the question, what does it mean to know something? Plato outlines three definitions of knowledge. Knowledge as perception, which is rejected because perception is subjective. Knowledge as true belief, which is rejected because belief can lack justification. And finally, knowledge as justified true belief, a definition that influenced centuries of philosophical inquiry. Plato's dialogues are more than philosophical texts. They are windows into the human soul. His works invite us to question, to seek, and to imagine a better world. Through his academy, he ensured that the torch of knowledge passed to future generations, illuminating the path for thinkers like Aristotle. Plato's vision of justice, love, and truth continues to inspire us, reminding us that philosophy isn't just about ideas, it's about how we live our lives. As he wrote the object of education is to turn the soul toward light and truth. Aristotle, the last of the gang of three, is often called the father of Western science and logic. His life was a bridge between the lofty ideals of Plato and the practical realities of the natural world. Where Plato dreamed of perfect forms and ideals, Aristotle looked at the world around him, observing, categorizing, and finding truth in its complexity. His philosophy blended rigorous empirical study with deep theoretical inquiry, making him one of the most influential thinkers in history. Aristotle was born in 384 BCE in Stagira, a small town in northern Greece. His father, Nicomachus, was a physician to the Macedonian royal family, exposing young Aristotle to the practicalities of medicine and the study of the natural world. After his parents' deaths, Aristotle moved to Athens at the age of 17 to study at Plato's academy, where he spent 20 years learning from and debating with his teacher. Aristotle respected Plato deeply, but often disagreed with him, especially on the nature of reality. While Plato emphasized abstract forms, Aristotle insisted that knowledge must come from experience and observation. After Plato's death, Aristotle traveled extensively, eventually becoming the tutor to Alexander the Great, shaping the mind of one of history's most powerful leaders. Aristotle's fascination with the natural world led him to develop some of the earliest biological studies. Aristotle believed that understanding living organisms was key to understanding life's purpose, a concept he called teleology, the idea that everything in nature has a purpose or goal. Aristotle wrote extensively, producing texts on ethics, politics, logic, biology, physics, metaphysics, and more. His writings reveal a mind that sought to understand every aspect of existence, from the smallest insect to the grandest metaphysical questions. Aristotle's practical sciences explore how humans can live fulfilling lives and create just society. Unlike fleeting happiness, eudaimonia is achieved through a lifetime of virtuous actions. Aristotle outlines the golden mean, the idea that virtue lies between extremes. Courage is the mean between cowardice and recklessness. Generosity is the mean between stinginess and extravagance. For Aristotle, virtue isn't innate but cultivated through habit. By practicing virtues daily, we shape our character and achieve a fulfilling life. Aristotle examines how communities contribute to the good life. He believed humans are inherently social creatures who thrive in well-ordered societies. A just government, Aristotle argued, balances the needs of individuals and the community. Monarchies and aristocracies could be virtuous, but democracy was valuable when rooted in equality and shared purpose. Tyranny and corruption, however, destroy the polis and harm its citizens. Aristotle is often called the father of logic. He laid the foundation for reasoning and argumentation, creating tools still used today. Aristotle introduced the concept of categories, a system for understanding and organizing the world. He divided existence into 10 categories, such as substance, quantity, and quality, which helped structure human thought. Aristotle's syllogism is a logical argument composed of 3 parts: a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. For example, major premise: all humans are mortal. Minor premise: Socrates is a human. Conclusion: therefore Socrates is mortal. This logical framework became the bedrock of Western philosophy and science. Aristotle's productive sciences examine how humans create meaning and communicate effectively. In rhetoric, Aristotle explores how language can influence thought and action. He outlines 3 modes of persuasion: ethos, which is the credibility or character of the speaker; pathos, the emotional appeal to the audience; and logos, the logical argument and evidence. Aristotle emphasized that rhetoric should be used ethically, as a tool to convey truth rather than manipulate. Aristotle examines the structure and purpose of art, particularly tragedy. He argued that tragedy provides catharsis, a purging of emotions that allows audiences to experience pity and fear in a safe context. Aristotle also analyzed the elements of storytelling, such as plot, character, and theme. His ideas laid the groundwork for literary criticism and narrative theory. Aristotle's theoretical sciences explore the fundamental nature of reality. Aristotle investigates the natural world, focusing on motion, change, and causation. He identifies 4 causes that explain why things exist and change: material cause, what something is made of; formal cause, its shape or structure; efficient cause, the process or agent that brings it into being; final cause, its purpose or goal. This teleological approach reflects Aristotle's belief that everything in nature has a purpose, from the growth of plants to the motion of stars. Aristotle introduces the concept of the unmoved mover, a divine being that initiates motion and change in the universe without itself being moved. This idea profoundly influenced later theological and philosophical thought. Aristotle's genius lies in his ability to bridge the abstract and the concrete. He taught us to seek knowledge not only in ideals, but also in the world around us. Aristotle's work reminds us of the importance of balance between thought and action, reason and emotion, and individual and community. His legacy endures as a guide for understanding the complexities of life and striving for excellence in all that we do. As he wrote in Nicomachean Ethics, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle are more than figures of history. They are timeless guides who challenge us to think deeply, live purposefully, and strive for truth. Their teachings still echo in modern debates, whether we're grappling with ethical dilemmas, building just societies, or pushing the boundaries of science. Socrates taught us to question everything, to seek virtue and meaning in life's complexity. Plato urged us to imagine a better world, to chase ideals of justice and beauty. Aristotle grounded us, showing that understanding the world requires both reason and observation. Their wisdom invites us to explore not only the universe but our inner selves, helping us navigate love, loss, and the pursuit of happiness. The Renaissance rekindled their light, inspiring art and innovation. The Enlightenment carried their torch forward, emphasizing reason, liberty, and progress. Their ideas shaped democracy, science, and the very notion of human rights. Even today, their influence guides our philosophies, from classrooms to courtrooms. The Gang of Three remind us that living wisely means asking hard questions, embracing uncertainty, and seeking balance. They challenge us to cultivate virtue in our actions, to build communities rooted in justice, and to never stop learning. Their legacy is a call to flourish, not just for ourselves, but for the greater good. They didn't just teach us how to think, they taught us how to live. Their journey is ours to continue.